My dad finally started the renovation he'd been saving for. Then the cash vanished overnight. Before I could even ask questions, my brother looked me in the eye and told everyone I stole it. And the worst part, my family believed him, until I found the one thing rumors can't beat. My name is Ethan. I'm 38 years old and I live about 40 minutes outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I work as a facilities technician for a mid-sized medical office network, mostly the unglamorous stuff. HVAC calls, vendor coordination, emergency repairs, and making sure a building full of people can do their jobs without thinking about what's behind the walls. I'm telling you that because it matters later. My whole adult life has been built around two things: being dependable and being careful with details. Not flashy, not lucky, not popular, just steady. And in my family, being steady has always been the same thing as being invisible. My dad, Martin, is 66. He's the kind of guy who doesn't talk about feelings, but he'll quietly fix your car battery in the rain without telling anyone he did it. After my mom died 8 years ago, Dad shrank in a way that wasn't physical. He kept going to work, kept mowing the lawn, kept paying bills on time, but the house started to feel like a place he endured instead of lived in. The house itself was old. Not charming old, more like every year something new breaks old. The bathroom tiles were cracked, the kitchen cabinets were swollen from water damage, the back deck had a soft spot you could feel through your shoes. Dad used to say, "I'll get to it." But then my mom got sick, and all the "I'll get to it" projects turned into maybe next year forever. My brother Logan is 41. He's 3 years older than me, louder than me, and this is important, always better at seeming like he's in control than actually being in control. Growing up, he was the golden boy. Football, big laugh, the one who could talk his way out of trouble. When he got married, my parents helped with the wedding. When he started a small landscaping business and it stumbled, Dad loaned him money that was never paid back. When I went to community college and then worked my way into my job, it was treated like it was what I was supposed to do. "Ethan will be fine," people said about me, like it wasn't a compliment but a fact of nature, like I didn't need anything because I didn't demand it. So when Dad finally decided he wanted to renovate, I didn't roll my eyes or assume it was another idea that would fade. I was genuinely happy. He didn't talk about it like a dream. He talked about it like a plan. He called me on a Tuesday evening in early March. I remember because I'd just gotten home, still in my work boots, and I was heating up leftovers. "Ethan," he said, in that tone that meant he had something he'd been rehearsing, "I'm going to redo the kitchen and the downstairs bathroom. Maybe the deck too, if I can swing it." I asked what changed. There was a pause. Then he said, "I'm tired of looking at the same broken things. Your mother would have hated that I let it go this long." That hit me right in the chest, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. He told me he'd been saving for it. Cash savings. A dedicated house envelope, he called it, even though it wasn't literally an envelope. It was his way of describing money he'd set aside and refused to touch. He'd sold a couple of older tools, picked up overtime, and cut back on expenses. He also mentioned a small inheritance from my mom's aunt that he'd never used. The total, according to him, was a little over $28,000. Not enough to rebuild the whole place, but enough to make the house functional again. I offered to come look at the bathroom and kitchen that weekend and help him prioritize what was urgent and what could wait. He agreed immediately, almost too quickly, like he was relieved I was taking it seriously. Then he said, "Logan's been helping me talk to contractors. He says he knows a guy." That was my first flicker of concern. Because Logan knows a guy usually meant Logan met someone who made him feel important. But I didn't argue. I didn't want to be the wet blanket. Renovations are stressful, and Dad was finally trying to do something for himself. That Saturday, I drove over in the morning. Dad's house smelled the same as always: old wood, coffee, and that faint detergent scent he used because Mom used to buy it. He looked healthier than he had in months, like having a project gave him a reason to stand up straighter. Logan showed up 20 minutes after me, wearing expensive sunglasses and talking like he was arriving at a ribbon cutting. He clapped Dad on the shoulder. "We're gonna make this place look brand new, Pop." I watched Dad's face. He loved hearing that, even if he didn't say it. Because Logan didn't just talk. Logan performed affection, and Dad drank it like water. We walked through the kitchen. Logan started pointing at everything. "New cabinets, granite. We'll open this wall, make it modern." Dad's eyes widened. "Open the wall." "Yeah," Logan said casually, like he was discussing changing a light bulb. It'll add value. You deserve something nice, I said carefully. We should see what the structure allows, and what the budget can handle. Logan glanced at me like I'd just interrupted a magic trick. Relax, man. That's why we hire pros. The contractor Logan knew was a guy named Darren. Mid-40s, clean polo shirt, smooth handshake, big confident smile. He talked fast, took lots of photos, tapped on walls like he could read them like Braille. He told Dad the same thing Logan wanted to hear. Open concept, upgraded fixtures, premium finish. He spoke in round numbers and reassuring phrases. Dad asked about cost. Darren said they could phase it, start with the kitchen and bathroom and see where they were after demolition. That was my second flicker of concern. Because I've worked around enough vendors to know that we'll see after demolition is a common way of saying I can't quote you honestly, but I'd like you to sign anyway. After Darren left, I asked Dad privately if he'd gotten a detailed estimate, a contract, payment schedule, anything in writing. Dad looked a little embarrassed. Logan said Darren would draw it up. He said it's normal. Logan overheard us. It's normal, he repeated louder, as if volume made it true. Stop grilling him like you're a lawyer. Dad's not a child. I held my hands up. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying with this kind of money we need paperwork. Logan smirked. You always think everyone's out to screw you. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't think everyone was out to screw me. I thought my brother was careless with other people's trust. The renovation started 2 weeks later. Dad called me occasionally to update me, and the updates weren't great. Darren says we found some rot. Dad told me one night. Darren says the plumbing's older than he thought. Darren says the cabinets are back-ordered, but if we upgrade, they can get them sooner. Each Darren says sounded like another hand dipping into Dad's savings. I asked if I could come by to look at the work, take pictures, review what was being done. Dad was agreeable, but Logan got defensive. Logan called me on a Friday afternoon while I was finishing a job ticket at work. What are you doing? He asked. What do you mean? Dad said you're coming over to inspect everything. Like you don't trust me. I kept my voice level. It's not about you. I just want to make sure Dad's getting what he's paying for. Logan laughed. Short, sharp. Bro, you're not paying for anything. That stung more than it should have. Because he was right. I wasn't paying for it. But I'd helped Dad fix things for years. I'd replaced light fixtures, patched drywall, cleaned gutters. I'd been the one he called when a pipe leaked at midnight. I wasn't paying because Dad didn't ask me to. Logan, meanwhile, acted like he was the project manager. I told him, I'm coming over because Dad wants me there. Logan's tone changed. Just don't start drama. Dad doesn't need your paranoia. Then he hung up. When I did go over that weekend, the house looked like a war zone. Cabinets ripped out, dust everywhere. The downstairs bathroom had exposed studs and a toilet sitting in the hallway like a joke no one wanted to laugh at. Dad looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like he was trying to stay excited but kept getting surprised by new bad news. Logan was there too, leaning on the counter like he owned the place. Darren wasn't around. I asked Dad if he'd seen invoices. Dad hesitated. Logan jumped in. He doesn't need to show you every receipt. The money's being handled. That phrase, being handled, made my stomach tighten. Handled by who? Dad avoided my eyes. Logan's been helping me with the payments, he admitted. It's easier. He's been making trips to the bank with me. I looked at Logan. Why? Logan spread his hands. Because Dad's busy, and I'm helping. Like a son is supposed to. I didn't push it right then because Dad's shoulders were slumped, and the last thing I wanted was a fight in the middle of a half-demolished kitchen. But on the drive home I kept replaying it. Trips to the bank, payments being handled, no invoices shown, open-ended costs. The next week, Dad didn't answer my call on Tuesday. That wasn't normal, so I tried again Wednesday. No answer. Thursday, he finally called back and his voice sounded wrong, thin. Ethan, he said, I need you to come over. My first thought was that something happened. Health, emergency, the renovation gone bad. I asked what was wrong. He didn't answer directly. He said, just come over, okay? When I got there, Logan's truck was already in the driveway, parked crooked like he'd slammed into the spot. The front door was open. Inside, Dad was sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers spread out, his hands trembling just slightly as he tried to straighten them. Logan was standing behind him, arms crossed, jaw tight. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Dad didn't say hello. He looked up at me, eyes watery, and said, the renovation money is gone. I blinked. Gone how? Logan answered before Dad could. It's missing, he said. The cash Dad had saved. The rest of it, it's gone. I stared at him, trying to process what missing even meant. Dad swallowed. There was supposed to be about 12,000 left. After the last payment, I checked. It's not there. I felt my chest tighten. Where was it? Dad hesitated again, and Logan leaned forward, voice turning sharp and sure like he'd been waiting for this moment. It doesn't matter where it was, Logan said. What matters is who had access. Then he looked me dead in the face, in my father's house, with my father watching, and said, Ethan, just tell Dad the truth. Tell him you took it. For a second I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I said very quietly, What did you just say? Logan didn't flinch. Don't play dumb. You've been acting weird about this renovation from day one, asking for paperwork, coming over to check. You're strapped for cash. Everybody knows you've got that car loan and the credit card from when your water heater blew last year. That was true. I'd had a rough year. I wasn't drowning, but I wasn't floating either. Dad's eyes were fixed on me, like he was searching my face for an answer he didn't want. I felt a wave of something hot, anger, humiliation, disbelief, but I forced my hands to unclench. Dad, I said, keeping my voice steady, I didn't take your money. Logan scoffed. Then where is it? I looked at the papers on the table. Bank withdrawal slips, scribbled notes, nothing clearly organized. I don't know, I said, but accusing me doesn't make it appear. Logan leaned closer, his voice rising. You're always the victim, always the calm one, like you're above it. But you're the only one who's been poking around and acting like you know better than everyone. I didn't look at him. I looked at Dad. Let's slow down, I said. We need facts. When was the last time you saw the money? Where was it stored? Who was present? What payments were made? What does the contractor say is still owed? Logan threw his hands up like I was insulting him. There he goes. Facts. Like this is a court case. Dad's voice cracked. Ethan, I can't understand it. I could see it happening in real time. Dad's fear turning into suspicion, because suspicion was easier than admitting he'd been careless, or that someone close to him could do something unforgivable. And Logan was feeding that suspicion like it was his job. I inhaled slowly. I'll help you find out what happened, I told Dad. But I'm not going to argue with accusations. I didn't do this. Logan's eyes narrowed. So you're refusing to explain. I'm refusing to confess to something I didn't do, I said. Dad pressed his palms against the table as if trying to steady himself. Logan says, he says you were here last Monday, when I went to the hardware store. I nodded. I dropped off the new smoke detectors you asked for. I left 10 minutes later. Logan said, plenty of time. I looked at him then, really looked. His expression wasn't grief. It wasn't worry. It was certainty, almost satisfaction. That's when I understood the real problem. It wasn't just that the money was missing. It was that my brother had already decided I was the thief, and he wanted everyone else to decide it too. And as I stood there in that half-renovated house, with my father's trust hanging by a thread, I realized something else. If I didn't find proof, real proof, this wasn't going to be a family argument that blew over. This was going to become my identity. So I told Dad I was going to start by getting a complete payment record from Darren's company. Every invoice, every change order, every receipt, because no renovation burns through money without leaving a paper trail. Logan laughed like that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. You can ask for whatever you want, he said. But you know what happened. I didn't answer him. I picked up my keys, looked at my father, and said, I'll call you tomorrow. We're going to figure this out. As I walked out, I heard Logan behind me, speaking in a low voice to Dad, too low to catch every word but clear enough to recognize the tone. The tone of someone planting a story. And by the time I got to my car, my phone was already buzzing with a text from my aunt. What is this I'm hearing about you and your dad's money? The moment I saw that text from my aunt, my stomach dropped in a way I can't really describe unless you've lived it, because it wasn't just a question. It was the sound of a rumor becoming a fact. I sat in my car in Dad's driveway for a full minute with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, reading it again like the words might change if I stared long enough. What is this I'm hearing about you and your dad's money? Not, Logan said something crazy. Not, is everything okay? Just what I'm hearing. I typed back. It's not true. Money is missing from Dad's renovation fund, and Logan is blaming me. I'm looking into it. I didn't add anything emotional. No anger. No, can you believe this? because I've learned that once people think you're guilty, emotion reads like guilt. Then I started the car and drove home, and the whole way there I could feel this cold pressure behind my eyes, the kind that says either you cry or you do something. So I did something. At home I pulled out a notebook. A real one, not an app. I wrote the date at the top and started a timeline. Renovation started 2 weeks ago. Darren walkthrough, Saturday. Demolition, first week. Dad says money missing, today. Last time Ethan at house alone, Monday, dropped off smoke detectors, 10 minutes. Then I wrote something else in big letters, paper trail. Because money doesn't vanish, people say that when they don't want to explain where it actually went. And renovations especially, are messy. But they're not magical. If a contractor takes money, there are invoices. If materials are bought, there are receipts. If extra work is done, there are change orders. If cash is paid, somebody withdrew it, somebody counted it, somebody signed for it. My brother's story worked only as long as everything stayed vague. So my plan was simple, make it specific. That night, I called Dad. He answered quickly, like he'd been sitting with the phone in his hand. "Hey," I said softly, "how are you holding up?" A long exhale. "I don't know, son. I feel sick." "I need you to do something for me," I told him. "Not for Logan, not for Darren, for you. I need you to tell me exactly how you've been paying." He hesitated. "Cash, mostly." "Okay," I said, writing as he spoke. "Where did the cash come from? Was it in the house? Or were you withdrawing it as needed?" He sounded embarrassed again. It was at the house, in a lockbox. I didn't want it in the bank. A lockbox, in the house. I could already feel the narrative forming in everyone's head. Ethan had access. Ethan took it. I forced myself to stay calm. Who knew about the lockbox? Silence. Then quietly, "Logan did. You did. And your Aunt Cheryl, years ago, when your mother was alive. Who had the key?" "I did," Dad said. "But Logan said we should keep an extra key in the kitchen drawer, in case something happened to me." I closed my eyes. "Dad, I know," he said, voice cracking. "I know how it sounds." "How many times did you take money out?" I asked. He started listing them. 2,000, 3,000, a few smaller amounts. And then he said something that made my pen freeze. "Logan also took some out. With me." "With you?" I repeated. "Yeah." He said Darren wanted cash for materials. He said it'd be faster. So we went to the bank. And Logan, he handled it. Handled it again. "Dad, did you ever pay Darren directly from the lockbox without a receipt?" A pause. "Sometimes." Logan said Darren doesn't like paperwork, that he gives discounts for cash. I didn't tell Dad what I wanted to say, which was, you were paying thousands of dollars to someone who doesn't like paperwork, while your own son who works with vendors begged you to get paperwork. Instead, I said, tomorrow morning I'm calling Darren's company. I'm going to request a full ledger, every invoice and payment record. If he's legitimate, he'll have it. If he fights it, that tells us something. Dad whispered, "Logan says you're going to cause trouble." "I'm going to cause clarity," I said. "Those are different." When we hung up, I didn't sleep much. My brain kept looping the same fear. What if there was no paper trail because it was all cash? What if Darren was shady and Logan was right beside him? What if Dad got scammed and the easiest person to blame was me? By morning, I'd decided something else. Even if Logan was involved, he wasn't going to confess. So I needed something stronger than logic. I needed a document that didn't care who was loudest in the room. At 9:03 a.m. I called Darren. It rang 5 times, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave an angry message. I said, "Hi Darren, this is Ethan, Martin's son. I'm helping Dad organize paperwork for his renovation. Please call me back today. I need copies of the contract, invoices, payment schedule, and any change orders." Then I called the number on Darren's business card again, but this time I pressed the option for office. A woman picked up, Darren and Company Remodeling. Her voice sounded tired, overworked, not polished. "Hi," I said. "My name's Ethan. I'm calling about the Martin residence renovation. I need the documents for the job, invoice history, change orders, and a payment ledger." There was a pause. "Are you the homeowner?" "I'm his son," I said. "He asked me to help." "We usually only release documents to the homeowner," she said automatically. "Understood," I replied. "I can have my father call and authorize it. But I'm trying to organize things quickly because there's confusion about payments." I chose that word on purpose. Confusion. Not theft. Not accusation. Confusion sounded neutral. Another pause. Then she lowered her voice slightly. Honestly, if there's confusion about payments, your dad should definitely call. That wasn't a refusal. It was a warning. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Dad immediately. Dad, I said, I need you to call Darren's office right now while I'm on the other line. Tell them you authorize them to speak to me and release all documents. Dad sounded nervous. Do I have to? Yes, I said gently but firmly. This is your money. Your house. Your name. I heard him inhale like he was bracing for impact. Then he said, okay, we did a three-way call. Dad's voice shook as he gave his name and address. He authorized them to send everything to my email. The officewoman, her name was Melissa, said, we can email the invoice packet by end of day. Then she added, almost like an afterthought, and Mr. Martin, please be aware the balance is currently past due. Dad went quiet. I went cold. Past due, I repeated before I could stop myself. Melissa said, yes, sir. The last scheduled payment wasn't received. Dad's voice turned small, but, Logan said, we paid. Melissa didn't argue. She just said, we can go over it once the ledger is sent. We hung up. Dad didn't say anything for several seconds. Then he whispered, how can it be past due if the money is gone? That was the first real crack in Logan's version of events. Because Logan's story was simple. Ethan stole leftover money from Dad's renovation fund. But if the job was past due, if the contractor claimed he still hadn't been paid, then what leftover money was I supposedly stealing? Unless the money didn't go where Logan claimed it went, or unless someone had been paying in a way Dad didn't understand. I told Dad, don't talk to Logan about this yet, not until I see the ledger. Dad sounded scared. He's going to be furious. I know, I said. Let him. Just don't warn him. Because if Logan was involved, warning him would give him time to clean up. And if Logan wasn't involved, he'd still have to face the fact that he'd accused me without evidence. Either way, silence was my only leverage. By noon, the rumor had already taken on a life of its own. My cousin Brandon called me. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. He didn't even say hello properly. Dude, what the hell is going on? I said. Dad's renovation fund is missing, and Logan is saying I stole it. I didn't. Brandon hesitated. Logan said he caught you. He didn't catch anything, I replied. He's building a story. Brandon lowered his voice. People are talking, man. Like, a lot. I know, I said, jaw tight. If you hear anything specific, who said what, when, tell me. Are you gonna call the cops? He asked. I almost laughed, but it came out bitter. Not without proof. The cops don't solve family gossip. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. Because that's the moment I understood the real damage. It wasn't just Dad's trust. It was my name. I'd worked for years to be the reliable one, the steady one, the guy people called when something broke. And in 48 hours, my brother had managed to turn me into the guy who steals from his own father. That evening, I went to Dad's again. I told myself it was to check on him. But I'll be honest, I wanted to see Logan's face. I wanted to see if there was guilt hiding behind his confidence. Logan was there, of course, sitting in Dad's living room like it was his office, one leg bouncing, phone in hand. When I walked in, he looked up and smirked. Look who decided to show up, he said, coming to return the cash. Dad didn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor. That hurt more than Logan's insult. Because Dad wasn't defending me. He was waiting to see which son would win. I kept my voice calm. Darren's office says the renovation balance is past due. Logan's smirk faltered for half a second. Then it came back even stronger. Yeah, because Darren's a moron, he said. He's disorganized. That's why we paid him in cash. No, I said. They said the last scheduled payment wasn't received. Logan shrugged. And I'm saying it was. Are you calling Dad a liar now? Classic Logan move. Twist it so any question becomes an attack on Dad. I looked at Dad. Did you hear what she said? Past due. Dad's voice was weak. I heard. Logan stood up, suddenly loud. This is what you do, Ethan. You confuse him. You use paperwork and process to make him doubt himself. It's emotional manipulation. I stared at him. You accused me of theft with zero proof. Logan's face hardened. Because the money is gone. Because you were here. Because you've been struggling. Connect the dots. I felt my hands tighten into fists, and I forced them open. Darren's office is emailing the full ledger and invoices, I said. By end of day. Logan's eyes narrowed. Why are you contacting them? Because somebody has to, I said. Dad deserves to know where his money went. Logan stepped closer, lowering his voice into something sharp and intimate. If you're doing this to cover yourself, it won't work. People already know. People know what you told them, I replied. There's a difference. He leaned in more. You always thought you were smarter than me. I didn't answer. Because I didn't need to be smarter. I needed to be right. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An email notification. I didn't pull it out yet. Not in front of Logan. Not in front of Dad. Not until I could read it carefully. But my heart started beating faster. Logan saw me glance down and smiled, like he thought the buzz was a confession arriving. I looked at Dad and said, I'm going to step outside for a minute. Logan scoffed. Go ahead. Run. I walked out to Dad's front porch with the air hitting my face like cold water. I pulled out my phone. The email was from Melissa at Darren & Company, subject line, Martin Residence Invoice Packet / Payment History. My thumb hovered over it for a second, because I knew whatever was in that file my life was about to split into before and after. I opened the email. It had multiple attachments, PDFs, invoice_001, invoice_002, change order _A, change order _B, payment ledger, and right there in the body of the email, one sentence stood out like a knife. Please note, several change orders were signed by Logan R., not the homeowner. I stared at that line so hard my eyes watered. Signed by Logan, not Dad, not me, Logan. And suddenly the missing money didn't feel mysterious anymore. It felt deliberate. I swallowed, took a slow breath, and opened the payment ledger, already knowing that the next page was going to tell me exactly who'd been handling things. I stood on Dad's porch with my phone in both hands, the way you hold something fragile before you drop it. The payment ledger PDF opened to a clean table, dates, descriptions, amounts, and a running balance. It looked official, boring, unemotional, and that's exactly why it was terrifying. The first thing I did was scroll to the top and work down slowly, line by line, like I was troubleshooting a system at work. Because when you're scared, method helps. Invoice 001, demolition plus disposal, $6,500. Paid. Cash. Received by Darren, $6,500. Invoice 002, plumbing rough-in, $4,800. Paid. Cash. Received by Darren, $4,800. So far it matched what Dad had described. Big chunks, cash payments. Then I hit the first entry that didn't sit right. Cash advance, materials, $3,000, received by Logan R. I read it twice. Not received by Darren. Not received by crew lead. Received by Logan. Then another one. Cash advance, materials, $2,500, received by Logan R. And another. Cash advance, materials, $1,800, received by Logan R. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I opened the change order PDFs. Change order _A was dated after demolition. It listed additional scope items, upgraded cabinets, premium countertop selection, expanded electrical work, and this was the big one, remove non-load-bearing wall between kitchen and dining area. At the bottom was a signature line, signed Logan R., printed name Logan R., relationship, authorized family representative. Change order _B was worse. It had bathroom upgrade package, custom tile, upgrade fixtures, and deck framing repair, additional rot discovered. Again, Logan R. I just stared at the screen, letting my brain catch up to what my eyes were reading. Logan hadn't just helped Dad. Logan had been authorizing extra work, extra cost, under Dad's roof, in Dad's name, without Dad signing. And he'd been physically receiving thousands of dollars in cash, according to the contractor's own records. I wasn't an investigator. I didn't have a badge. I wasn't looking to destroy my brother's life. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't me. This was paper. This was documented. This was the first solid ground I'd felt under my feet since Dad looked at me like a stranger. I heard the front door open behind me. Logan's voice came out sharp. What are you doing out here? I didn't turn. Reading. He laughed once. Reading what? I finally faced him and held up my phone. The invoice packet your contractor sent. His eyes flicked to the screen. The laugh disappeared. Give me that, he said, stepping closer. I pulled the phone back. No. He stopped, jaw working. You're snooping. Again. I'm looking at documents, I said. Documents that say you signed change orders. Logan's face tightened, but he recovered fast, like he always did. Yeah, because Dad asked me to. Did he? I asked quietly. Logan's eyes flashed. Are you trying to turn him against me? I almost said, you turned him against me in one afternoon. But I kept my voice even. These change orders increase the budget, I said, and the ledger shows cash advances received by you. Multiple times. Logan made a disgusted sound. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked, because Dad thinks the money disappeared. You told everyone I stole it, and now I'm looking at a contractor's records that literally have your name on them. Logan leaned in, voice low. Listen, you don't understand how this works. Darren needed materials. Dad didn't want to deal with it, so I handled it. That's it. You handled it, I repeated. That phrase again. Logan's nostrils flared. You want the truth? Fine. Dad was overwhelmed. He was getting confused. If I didn't step in, nothing would get done. You think you're helping by waving paperwork around. You're just stressing him out. I looked past Logan into the house where Dad sat. I could see him through the window, still at the table, shoulders slumped. I said, then come inside with me. We'll show him together. We'll clear it up. Logan's expression flickered. One beat of hesitation. Then he said, no. That one word told me more than any ledger ever could. Because if it was innocent, you'd want transparency. If it was innocent, you'd want Dad to see it. But Logan didn't want Dad to see anything he hadn't narrated first. I walked back inside. Dad was still in the same spot, hands folded like he was trying to hold himself together. He looked up at me, eyes tired, like he expected another argument. I sat across from him and set my phone on the table, angled so Dad could see the screen. Dad, I said gently, I got the invoice packet. Logan stayed standing behind me, too close, like a shadow. Dad's voice was soft. Okay. I scrolled to the email body and read it out loud. Several change orders were signed by Logan R., not the homeowner. Dad blinked. Change orders? I opened change order _A and slid the phone closer. This is an add-on. Extra work, extra cost. It has Logan's signature. Dad leaned in, squinting. His face changed slowly. Confusion first, then something like embarrassment, then pain. Logan, Dad said, not loud but heavy. Logan immediately spoke over him. Dad, I told you about that. You said it was fine. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. He looked between us like he was trying to remember a conversation that may or may not have happened. I said, there are also cash advances listed as received by Logan. Dad's eyes snapped to Logan. What does that mean? Logan threw his hands out. It means Darren gave me the materials list, and I took cash to pay suppliers. It's normal. I didn't argue normal. I stayed with provable. Okay, I said. Then where are the receipts from the suppliers? Where's the itemized materials list? Where's the record of what the cash actually purchased? Logan stared at me like I was being intentionally cruel. Who keeps every receipt? It was a renovation. I do, I said, because I work with vendors. Because that's how money stops disappearing. Dad rubbed his forehead, like it physically hurt to think. Logan, he said again, voice strained, did you take money out of the lockbox when I wasn't here? Logan snapped. No. Too fast. Too loud. Dad flinched. Then Logan pivoted immediately, like he felt the slip and was trying to cover it. You know what? He said, pointing at me. This is exactly what he's doing. He's turning this into a witch hunt to distract from the fact that the cash is gone. Cash, from your house. Ethan was here. Ethan's the one asking questions because he's guilty. He looked at me with that practiced rage. You're trying to bury us in paperwork so no one sees the obvious. Dad's eyes went back to me, uncertain, and it made me feel like I was falling again. So I changed tactics. I said, Dad, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to pause, to stop telling people I stole anything until we've checked the facts. Dad's voice was almost a whisper. People already know. I nodded. Then we correct it with proof. Logan barked. What proof? A contractor's spreadsheet. You think that means anything? Yes, I said. It means something, and it's not the only proof I'm going to get. Logan's eyes narrowed. What are you planning? I'm planning to verify every cash withdrawal and every payment, I said. From the bank side, from the contractor side, from any supplier side, until the story matches the math. Dad looked exhausted. Ethan, I can't do this. I can't fight with your brother. I'm not asking you to fight, I said. I'm asking you to let me check. Quietly. Logan scoffed. Oh, quietly. He wants to quietly make me look like a criminal. I didn't answer him. I looked at Dad and said, I'm going to the bank tomorrow. With your permission, I want to get a printout of withdrawals tied to this renovation. Not your whole life, just the relevant period. Dad hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. Okay. Logan's head snapped toward Dad. Seriously? You're letting him? Dad cut him off, which shocked both of us. Dad almost never cut Logan off. I said okay. Dad repeated firmer. If it clears this up. Logan's face hardened. Fine. Do whatever you want. Then he turned and walked out of the room like he'd been insulted. That night, I went home with a new kind of dread, because I'd won a small permission. But I could feel Logan gearing up to win the war of perception. And I was right. The next morning, I got 3 calls before 10 a.m. My Aunt Cheryl left a voicemail. Ethan, your father is sick over this. Why would you do this to him? My cousin Brandon texted. Logan says you're falsifying documents now. And my sister-in-law, Logan's wife, Kayla, messaged me on Facebook, something I hadn't used in months, saying, if you took it, just admit it and stop dragging everyone. Dragging everyone. Like I was the one who lit the match. I didn't respond to Kayla. I didn't defend myself to my aunt. I saved screenshots, logged the time, and wrote down who said what. Because when a person is lying, they recruit a crowd, and crowds love certainty. At noon, Dad met me at his bank branch. He looked older than he had a week ago, like stress had scraped the color out of him. Logan didn't come, which was interesting. We sat with a banker named Priya, and Dad authorized a transaction history printout for the last 60 days. Priya was polite, professional. She slid papers across the desk, and there it was, multiple large cash withdrawals, not unusual by itself. Dad had said he was paying in cash, but then I noticed a pattern. Some withdrawals happened on days Dad was at work, on the other side of town, according to his schedule. I didn't say that out loud yet. I just asked Priya, do these withdrawals show who initiated them? Was it in person? ATM? Teller? Priya pointed. These were teller withdrawals. I kept my face neutral. Are there any notes, like who presented ID? Priya hesitated. We don't typically print that on customer-facing transaction histories. I looked at Dad. Dad, would you be willing to ask if the bank has any record of who was physically present for these withdrawals? Dad looked uncomfortable. Can they do that? Priya said carefully. We have internal records, and there may be security footage, but access usually requires a formal request, sometimes law enforcement. Dad swallowed hard. I don't want police. I'm not asking for police, I said quickly. Not yet. I'm asking for clarity. Priya leaned forward slightly. Mr. Martin, if you believe someone is withdrawing funds without your authorization, you should speak to our fraud department. Dad's eyes flicked to me, panic rising. I don't think. I touched his hand lightly. Dad, you don't have to accuse anyone today, but you have to protect yourself. We left the bank with the printout. In the parking lot, Dad stared at the pages like they were written in another language. I don't remember some of these, he admitted. I nodded. I know. On the drive back to his house, Dad's phone rang. He put it on speaker without thinking. It was Logan. Where are you? Logan demanded. Dad's voice was tired. I'm with Ethan. There was a pause, just a beat, and then Logan's tone went sharp. At the bank? Dad didn't answer fast enough. Logan exploded. Are you kidding me? You're letting him dig through your accounts? Dad, he's trying to cover his tracks. He's trying to confuse you. I kept my eyes on the road, but my hands were tight on the wheel. Dad said weakly. Logan, I just want to understand. Logan snapped. Understand what? That Ethan stole from you? We already understand. I finally spoke. Logan, the contractor's documents show you signed change orders. The ledger shows cash advances received by you. We're verifying withdrawals. If it's clean, you have nothing to worry about. Logan went quiet for a second. Then he said, with forced calm, stop talking like you're the authority. You're not. And then he added, like a dagger he could twist later. If you drag me through this and I'm innocent, I'm done with both of you. He hung up. Dad stared out the window like he'd been slapped. I didn't say. That's emotional blackmail. I just drove. Back at Dad's house, I asked him for something else. Any texts with Logan about the renovation? Any notes? Any lists? Anything? Dad handed me his phone reluctantly. He hated the idea of evidence. He still wanted this to be a misunderstanding. But when I scrolled through the messages, I found multiple texts from Logan like, need $2,500 today. Darren needs it for materials. Got it handled. Don't stress. Signed the add-on. Worth it. Dad had replied with short, hesitant answers, often hours later. Sometimes just okay. And that's when it hit me. Dad didn't understand what he was agreeing to. He trusted Logan's summaries, which meant Logan could claim permission for anything. I took photos of the relevant messages and emailed them to myself with timestamps. Then my phone rang. It was Melissa from Darren and Company. I stepped into the hallway to take it. "Ethan," she said, "I'm calling because Darren asked me to update you. The account is still past due, and our office is preparing a notice of intent to Lien if we don't receive payment or a payment plan." A notice of intent to Lien. My throat went dry. A lien? On my dad's house? "Yes," she said, matter of fact. "It's standard procedure when accounts go delinquent. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to make sure you understand the timeline." "How much is the past due balance?" I asked. She hesitated. "As of today, $9,740. Almost $10,000 still owed after Dad's money was supposedly gone." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Melissa, I need one more thing. Is Darren willing to provide a written statement about who signed the change orders and who received the cash advances?" She paused. "I can ask." "Please do," I said, "because the family is blaming the wrong person and I need something official." Melissa sighed softly. "I'll see what I can do. But Ethan, I'm going to be blunt. Darren will protect himself first. If there's a dispute in your family, you need to handle it fast." "I know," I said. We hung up, and I stood in the hallway staring at the wall. A lien isn't gossip. A lien is a legal mark on a property. A lien is the world saying, someone didn't pay. And if a lien got filed, it wouldn't matter what Logan told relatives at barbecues. It would be recorded. It would be traceable. It would come with documentation attached. Which meant the next step was going to force the truth into daylight, whether my family was ready or not. I walked back into the kitchen where Dad sat, and I said, "Dad, the contractor is preparing a notice of intent to Lien." Dad's face drained of color. "A lien? On my house?" I nodded. "Yes." From the living room, Logan's voice suddenly boomed, because he'd walked back in without us hearing him. "A lien?" he repeated, loud and incredulous, like he was hearing a ridiculous rumor. "How the hell is there a lien if Ethan stole the money?" I turned slowly, and for the first time, Logan looked genuinely worried. Not angry, not offended, worried, because a lien didn't care about his story. And I had a feeling the paperwork that came next was going to have his name on it in a way he couldn't talk his way out of. Logan's question hung in the air like smoke. How the hell is there a lien if Ethan stole the money? Dad sat frozen, eyes wide, like the word lien had turned his house into something fragile. I kept my voice calm. "It's not filed yet. Melissa said they're preparing a notice of intent to Lien. That's the step before they actually record it." Logan stepped into the kitchen, hands spread, performing disbelief. "So you called them. You got them worked up. Great job, Ethan." I looked at him. "They're worked up because they say they're owed almost $10,000. Dad's voice cracked. "10,000. But we paid. We paid so much." Logan cut in fast. "We did pay. Darren is either confused or he's trying to squeeze you." Dad's eyes flicked to him, searching. "Are you sure?" Logan's face hardened and I saw it. How he handled doubt, not with reassurance, but with pressure. "Dad," Logan snapped, "don't start doubting me now. You were there. You saw the cash. You saw Darren take it." Dad flinched at the tone. Then he looked down at his hands again. That was the moment I realized Logan wasn't just defending himself. He was controlling Dad. And the only way to break that control was to make the truth so undeniable. Dad didn't have to choose between his sons. He could choose paper. I said, "We need a meeting with Darren, in person, at his office, with all invoices printed and all signatures verified." Logan laughed sharply. "A meeting? Like we're going to sit down and sing Kumbaya?" "Yes," I said, "a meeting. Because if they file a lien, it becomes legal. And if it becomes legal, you don't get to manage it with attitude." Logan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "What are you actually trying to do here?" I met his stare. "I'm trying to stop a lien from hitting Dad's house and clear my name. That's what I'm trying to do." Logan's jaw flexed. "Your name. There it is." I didn't take the bait. "Dad, do you want me to set up the meeting?" Dad hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, please." Logan threw his arms up. Unbelievable. He stormed out into the living room, muttering loud enough for us to hear. "He's turning Dad against me. He's always wanted this." Dad pressed his fingers to his temples. "I can't handle this. I can't do this fighting." I leaned forward. "Then don't fight. Just watch. Let the documents speak." That evening, I did 3 things. First, I emailed Melissa back, confirming I wanted a meeting, and requesting Darren bring originals or copies of anything with signatures, especially change orders and acknowledgments of cash advances. Second, I drafted a simple summary for Dad, 1-page bullet points, no emotion, listing what we knew: missing cash, contractor past due balance, change orders signed by Logan, cash advances received by Logan, bank withdrawals, Dad doesn't remember. Third, I texted Logan. I didn't insult him. I didn't argue. I wrote, "Meeting with Darren will happen. If everything is innocent, this clears you too. Please stop telling people I stole anything until then." He read it, didn't reply. The next day, Dad's sister, my Aunt Cheryl, showed up unannounced. She marched in like she owned the place, heels clicking on the dusty subfloor where the kitchen used to be. She took one look at the half-renovated mess and then looked at Dad like he'd been abandoned. "Martin," she said, "what is happening in this house?" Dad's shoulders sagged. "It's a mess." "A mess," she repeated. "I'm getting calls, people asking me if your youngest son stole from you, and now I walk in and your kitchen is ripped out and you look like you haven't slept." I stood up from the table. "Aunt Cheryl." She held up a hand. Don't Aunt Cheryl me. I want to know the truth." Logan arrived 5 minutes later, like he'd been summoned by the sound of judgment. He walked in with Kayla behind him, and instantly the room turned into a courtroom. Logan didn't greet me. He went straight to Aunt Cheryl and Dad. "He's been calling the contractor," Logan said, "threatening liens, digging through bank stuff, making Dad crazy." I spoke evenly. "I didn't threaten anything. The contractor said they're owed money. That's why liens exist." Kayla crossed her arms, eyes sharp. "So where's the money then, Ethan?" There it was, the question everyone loved. Simple, accusatory. I said, "I don't know yet, but I know the contractor's ledger shows multiple cash advances received by Logan, and it shows change orders signed by Logan." Aunt Cheryl's face tightened. "Logan, is that true?" Logan's eyes flashed. "It's out of context." "What context makes it okay?" I asked. "Because Dad says 12,000 is missing, and now the contractor says Dad still owes money. Those two things can't both be true unless someone mishandled the payments." Logan took a step toward me. "You keep saying mishandled like you're not the one with motive." Kayla jumped in, voice dripping with certainty. "You've always been jealous of Logan. You've always resented him." I stared at her, honestly stunned. Jealousy, resentment, like this was some emotional soap opera and not a legal problem about Dad's house. Dad's voice trembled. "Stop, both of you." Aunt Cheryl turned to Dad. "Martin, did Ethan take your money?" Dad looked at me, and I saw the weight of it. How much easier it would be for him to say yes. How much cleaner the world would feel if the problem had one villain. He swallowed. "I don't know." That two-word answer felt like a punch. Logan seized it immediately. "There you go. He doesn't know because you did it. You're making him doubt his own memory." I kept myself steady. "Or he doesn't know because he trusted you to handle it." Logan's face reddened. "I handled it because someone had to. Ethan, you're not the hero here." I reached into my bag and pulled out printed copies of the ledger and change orders. I slid them across the table toward Aunt Cheryl and Dad. "Then explain these," I said. Aunt Cheryl picked up the papers, scanning. Her brow furrowed. Logan started talking quickly, before anyone could fully read. Darren needed speed. Dad didn't want delays. It was easier if I signed. Dad agreed. The cash advances were for materials paid to suppliers. "Which suppliers?" I asked. Logan shot back. "I don't remember. It was months of work." "It's been weeks," I corrected quietly. The room went still for half a second. That was a crack. A small one, but real. Aunt Cheryl looked up. "Logan, why would you sign anything without your father's signature?" Logan's eyes darted to Dad. "Dad told me to." Dad blinked, confused. I didn't tell you to sign." Logan's tone sharpened instantly. "Yes, you did. You said, 'Just do it.'" Dad's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a man watching his own memory get rewritten. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I said, "Dad, do you remember reading these change orders? The specific items? The costs?" Dad stared at the pages like they were a foreign language. "No." Kayla scoffed. "He's older. He doesn't remember everything." Aunt Cheryl snapped. "Then that's exactly why you don't shove papers in front of him and sign things yourself." Logan's face hardened. "Are you taking his side now?" Aunt Cheryl glared. "I'm taking Martin's side." For the first time since this started, Logan didn't have full control of the room. He pivoted. New angle, new weapon. He pointed at me. Even if I signed, that doesn't explain the cash missing from the lockbox. I nodded. It doesn't. That's why we're checking everything, including withdrawals, including who had access, including who suggested leaving a key in the kitchen drawer. Dad's eyes lifted sharply. He hadn't thought about that. Logan's eyes narrowed. Oh my God, you're implying I stole it. I'm implying nothing, I said. I'm following the trail. Aunt Cheryl stared at Logan. Did you tell people Ethan stole it? Logan didn't hesitate. I told people what I believed, because I'm protecting Dad. I turned to Aunt Cheryl. He didn't say I believe. He said it as fact. He told people he caught me. He told Kayla. Kayla told others. That's why my phone started ringing. Kayla's cheeks flushed. Because you looked guilty. Because Logan told you I was guilty, I corrected. Dad suddenly pushed his chair back with a scraping sound that made everyone stop. I'm done, Dad said, voice shaking but louder than I'd heard in a long time. I'm done with accusations. I'm done with yelling in my house. Silence. He looked at Logan. Stop telling people Ethan stole from me. Logan's face tightened. Dad cut him off. Stop. Then Dad looked at me. And Ethan, don't call anyone without telling me. I nodded. Fair. He turned to Aunt Cheryl. And you, please don't call people about this anymore. I feel like I'm dying of embarrassment. Aunt Cheryl's face softened. Martin. Dad waved a hand, exhausted. Just stop. Everyone left shortly after that. But the damage stayed in the air, thick and sour. When I got home, I found a new message from Melissa. Meeting scheduled Friday, 10:30 a.m. at our office. Darren will be present. Please bring homeowner ID. I forwarded it to Dad and sent Logan a short text. Friday, 10:30. Be there. Logan replied instantly. Not going. Of course. Because this was the moment the truth would be outside his control. Friday morning, Dad and I drove to Darren and Company together. Dad wore his nicer jacket, the one he used to wear to church when Mom was alive. It hung looser on him now. In the car, he said quietly, Ethan, what if Logan really didn't do anything wrong? I kept my eyes on the road. Then the documents will show it, and I'll apologize, publicly. Dad nodded slowly. And if he did? I swallowed. Then we deal with it. We walked into the office. It was in a strip mall between a flooring showroom and a tax prep place. The waiting room smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Melissa greeted us, polite but tense. She led us into a small conference room with a table and a stack of folders. Darren came in 2 minutes later. Up close, without the salesman at your house energy, he looked different. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a man who'd been yelled at by enough clients to stop taking it personally. Mr. Martin, he said, shaking Dad's hand. Ethan. Dad nodded stiffly. Darren. I started immediately, before anyone could waste time. We need to reconcile the payments. Dad believes he paid most of the renovation in cash. Your office says the account is past due and preparing a lien notice. We have your ledger and change orders. We need to confirm what's accurate and what's not. Darren sat down, opened a folder and slid a printed ledger across the table. This is accurate. This is what we have on file. Dad's voice shook. But I paid you. Darren nodded like he'd heard it 100 times. You paid some. Not all. I leaned forward. Let's talk about the cash advances received by Logan R. Darren's eyes flicked up. Your son. My brother, I corrected. Darren shrugged. He was the one coordinating. He asked for advances for materials. We documented it. He signed for them. Dad looked stunned. Logan signed for money? Darren nodded. Yes. Dad's hands trembled as he reached for the paper. I watched Darren carefully. Do you have the signed receipts? The acknowledgements? Darren pulled another sheet from the folder and placed it on the table. A printed receipt form with a signature. Logan's signature. I knew it immediately because I'd seen it on his driver's license renewal forms years ago. Big, confident scribble like he was signing autographs. Dad stared at it like it was a snake. Darren, Dad whispered, why would you give my money to Logan? Darren's expression stayed neutral. He represented himself as authorized. He signed change orders. He was present for payments. I assumed you were fine with it. I asked, did Dad ever sign a document authorizing Logan to act on his behalf? Darren hesitated. Not a formal power of attorney. No. I felt something cold move through me. So you let someone other than the homeowner sign for thousands of dollars and authorize extra work? I asked. Darren's eyes tightened. It happens. Families do it. The homeowner is older. Someone helps. Dad looked like he was going to be sick. I didn't know he was signing extra work. Darren leaned back, exhaling through his nose. Mr. Martin, I'm not here to referee your family. I'm here because my company hasn't been paid. I nodded. Understood. But your next step is a lien, which is legal, so we need to be precise. Darren tapped the folder. We are precise. Melissa entered quietly and placed another document in front of Dad. It was the notice of intent to lien. Not filed yet, but ready. At the bottom was a list of attachments that would accompany the filing. Invoice history, payment ledger, signed change orders, signed cash advance receipts. A neat little package of truth. I watched Dad's face as he read it. His lips moved slightly like he was trying to understand each word. Then Dad looked up at Darren. If you file this, everyone will see. Darren nodded. It becomes public record. Dad's eyes filled with tears. My house. I reached across the table and touched Dad's wrist. Dad, we can prevent it. We just need time and a plan, Darren said. Time costs money. I looked at Darren. Give us 1 week. Hold the lien. In 1 week, Dad will either pay you or dispute the charges formally. But we need your cooperation, written if possible that Logan signed and received funds. Darren's jaw worked. I can provide copies of what we have. I need a statement, I said. A simple one. Logan R. signed X and received Y. Darren hesitated, then glanced at Melissa. Melissa's expression said, Careful, he finally said. I'll talk to my attorney about wording. But I'm not getting dragged into family court. I nodded. Fair. We don't need you in court. We need documentation. Darren leaned forward. You also need to understand something. I waited. He said, the work your brother authorized, some of it was real. It was done. It added cost. If you're going to accuse him, make sure you're ready for what comes next. I held his gaze. I'm not accusing anyone today. I'm collecting facts. The meeting ended with a temporary agreement. Darren would pause the lien for 7 days if Dad made a good faith payment and signed a payment plan. Dad and I walked out to the car in silence. Halfway across the parking lot, Dad stopped walking. Ethan, he said, voice broken. Did Logan really? He couldn't finish. I didn't answer with anger. I didn't say I told you. I didn't say finally. I said, I don't know everything yet, but I know he's been signing and receiving money. And I know he told everyone you were robbed by me. Dad's eyes went distant. My own son. I took a slow breath. Dad, there's one more thing we can do. He looked at me blankly. I said, if Darren files a lien, it becomes public record. But before that happens, we can confront Logan with the documents. Not with yelling, with paper. And we can demand he produce receipts for those cash advances. If he can't, then the story ends. Dad swallowed hard. He'll deny it. Then we escalate. I said, we request bank verification. We request footage. We file a report if we have to. Dad flinched at the word report. I continued, Dad, he's already doing damage. Every day this goes on, your family thinks I'm a thief. Dad nodded slowly, grief in his eyes. Okay. We drove back to Dad's house, and when we pulled into the driveway, Logan's truck was there. My stomach tightened. Dad stared at the truck like it was a warning sign. Inside, Logan was pacing the living room. Kayla sat on the couch, arms crossed, expression cold. Logan turned as we entered. Where were you? He demanded. Dad's voice was quiet. At Darren's office. Logan's face twisted. So you went behind my back. Dad said, it's my house. Logan opened his mouth to explode, but I stepped forward and placed the folder from Darren's office on the coffee table right between us. No, I said calmly. We went to prevent a lien, which is being prepared right now because your contractor says he hasn't been fully paid. Hector pointed to a form. You added him after your wife passed. It's dated 8 years ago. Dad stared at it, and I could see the memory clicking into place, how he'd been overwhelmed, how Logan had helped, how adding him probably felt like a responsible family decision at the time. Dad's voice cracked. I forgot. Hector nodded gently. Because he is an authorized signer, he could withdraw funds legally from the bank's perspective. However, he tapped another page. Several withdrawals were initiated by Logan alone, not you. And based on our internal notes and available footage snapshots, you were not present for those transactions. Dad's face drained of color, so he took it. Hector didn't say took. He said he withdrew it, but we both knew what it meant. Dad's hands trembled so hard he had to press them together. How much? Hector named the total withdrawn in that period. It matched what was missing from the lockbox and then some, because not all of it was from the lockbox. Some of it was directly from Dad's account. Dad stared at the number like it was written in blood. I asked, can you provide a formal letter summarizing this? Hector nodded. We can provide a transaction summary and a statement of authorized signer status. We can't release footage copies without law enforcement, but we can provide documentation for your records. Dad took the packet home like it weighed 100 pounds. That evening, Dad called Logan and told him to come over. Alone. Logan arrived an hour later, swaggering in like he was still in charge. Dad didn't offer coffee, didn't offer a seat. He just held out the bank packet with shaking hands and said, "Explain." Logan glanced at it, barely reading. "What is this?" "It's the bank," Dad said, voice raw. "It shows you withdrew money. Alone. Multiple times." Logan scoffed. "So now you're believing the bank over your own son?" Dad's eyes flashed, and that was the first time I'd seen real anger from him in years. "I'm believing paper," Dad said, "because paper doesn't lie to my face." Logan's expression shifted just a flicker before he tried to recover. "You're letting Ethan poison you," Logan said. "He's always hated me." "I never hated you," I cut in, voice steady but loud enough to stop him. "I just saw what you were doing." Logan turned to me, eyes sharp. "You think you won?" I didn't respond to that. I said, "Where did the money go, Logan?" Logan opened his mouth to deny again, but Dad stepped forward, voice breaking into something that sounded like grief and fury at the same time. "I watched my family call Ethan a thief," Dad said. "I watched him get treated like trash. Because of you." Logan's face tightened. "Dad, I was trying to protect you." Dad slammed the packet down on the table. Not hard, but with finality. "Protect me from what?" Dad demanded. "From my own reality." Silence. For a long moment, Logan's confidence finally cracked. His shoulders dropped slightly, and the air around him changed like he was tired of holding up the lie. He said quieter, "I was going to put it back." That sentence made my stomach twist, because it meant he'd done it. Dad's voice went very calm. "Put back what?" Logan looked at the floor. "I borrowed it." I stared at him. "Borrowed it for what?" Logan's jaw worked. "It doesn't matter." "It matters," Dad said sharply. "It matters because you didn't borrow from a bank. You borrowed from me, and you blamed your brother." Logan's eyes flashed with shame and anger mixed together. "I needed it, okay? I needed it. Things got tight. The business, I repeated. "Or you're gambling." Logan's head snapped up. "Shut up." Dad's face went even paler. "Gambling." Logan didn't answer, and that was answer enough. Dad stood there shaking, then said words I will never forget. "I have 2 sons," he said. "One of them took money. The other one took the blame." Logan tried to step closer. "Dad, come on." Dad held up a hand. "No." Then he said, "You will repay every cent you withdrew. You will sign a written repayment plan, and until you do, you are not welcome in this house." Logan's eyes widened. "You can't do that." Dad's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Watch me." Logan looked at me like he wanted me to beg Dad to soften. I didn't, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about the first boundary Dad had set in years. Logan left that night without another word. The next week, Darren's office received the remaining payment through a combination of Dad's payment plan, and after Dad threatened legal action, Logan's first repayment transfer. Darren never filed the lien, but the threat of it did exactly what I'd hoped. It forced the truth into a lane where it had to be documented, and slowly the family noise changed. People didn't apologize all at once. Some never did. Some sent short texts like, "Sorry about the misunderstanding," which felt like a cowardly way to avoid saying, "I believed you could steal from your father." Aunt Cheryl came over one afternoon and cried in Dad's half-finished kitchen, telling him she should have protected both of us better. Dad just looked tired and said, "I should have." As for me, my name cleared, but it didn't magically heal anything. Because when someone you love lets others think the worst of you, you don't forget it. You just decide what you will accept next time. Logan tried reaching out twice, once with a late-night text, "You happy now?" and later with, "Tell Dad I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Dad didn't respond either. Not until Logan made 3 repayments on time and signed the full repayment plan in front of a notary, just like Hector advised. Even then, Dad told him something that sounded brutal but was actually the truth. "I love you," Dad said, "but I don't trust you." That's where we left it. The renovations eventually got finished, simpler than Logan's grand vision. No opened walls, no premium upgrades, just solid, clean, functional work that made Dad's house feel like a home again. And one night, months later, Dad stood in his new kitchen and said quietly, almost to himself, "Your mother would have liked this." Then he looked at me and added, and she would have been proud of how you handled it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt relieved and sad. Because it shouldn't take legal paperwork and a lien threat for a family to treat the honest person with basic respect. If there's anything I learned from all of this, it's simple. In families, the loudest story spreads fastest. But the truth, the real truth, usually lives in boring places: receipts, signatures, bank histories, and official filings. And when someone tries to destroy your name, staying calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. Because eventually, if you keep following the trail, paper catches up to people.